Back of CA map. Back of CA map. Okay, so I did Amnesty, and then it's a little rushed, that last video, trying to fit everything under the hour limit I have on this recording program software I have built into Microsoft. So, went to Mexico, wrote that Amnesty short story, which was supposed to be like maybe 1/6 or 1/9 of a novel, and now maybe it's the outline of a play, because I really like the characters and I really like the setting, and I see how everything would transition into each other. But it's something, and we have now, for the first time by 2007, a completed work of sorts. Um, I was in Mexico on my uncle's roof. He was in Guadalajara. He was complaining that I was going to tell the family that he made me live on the roof. But he didn't. I had a tent with me, and I wanted to pitch my tent on his roof so I could smoke my weed in peace and people wouldn't bug me because I'm very Christian. And also just have my candlelight and my poetry. When there's storms, I'd have to spread out and hold my tent so it doesn't blow off the roof. It was a very interesting, cool Mexican experience. I got to experience a full moon and the night sky in the fall. I think it was fall. My cousins showed me around Guadalajara. Um, there was a girl I met at the local gym. I got a little gym membership, always working out all my life. I find ever since I was in the Army, ever since I was in high school, hitting the gym first in high school in the wrestling team, and then in the Army with PT, and then hitting weights hard in the Army. Just trying to make sure I have a level of strength. I get stronger eventually. I push boundaries, but usually it's to get me back into a pocket of comfort. I just hit the gym this morning actually, so I stopped working out probably in July. So it's been July, August, September, October, and some of November. So about 4 months not going to the gym, and I feel like to quantify it, I used to be able to do 85 pounds on each hand, bench press easy, 12 reps, 12, 10, and 8. And now I can barely do 60. I tried 65 today, and that was hard. That's about how strong I was in the Army. When I was 18, 19, and I first started hitting free weights, I was going from 45 up to maybe 60. 60 was my max. When I took long times off in my life, usually when I come back, I'm at 35 to 45 bench press, dumbbell in each hand. And since I've been doing real estate, I've had money. Money does wonders for your strength, because you could eat as much food as you want now for the first time in your life. So 2016, 17, and into 18, I got to actually work on my strength. Not full time, but when I go to the gym, I can actually get a little stronger, because I could plan out over long term. You could experiment with things. I realized I wasn't eating enough. All my life, I didn't really eat that much protein or that much shakes and stuff. So 2016 and 17, I experimented with just eating a lot more meat, and it worked out really well. Put on some weight. I got up to 85-pound dumbbells in each hand. And then other ways to measure your strength, my row was pretty strong, deadlift was pretty good. I don't remember what those are. Deadlift probably a couple 100 pounds, 250. It's not the most. I never was best at squatting. I have to do more of that core stuff. I ignore a lot of back. But those are good just for the full kinetic function. That's interesting too. I talk about there's a sales philosophy I've developed in life. I noticed there's a romantic philosophy, how to treat women, how I approach romance, and then also getting my needs met, because not everything is love. Some things are just that itch that you're trying to scratch. Some people want to fast all their life until they can just have one meal, that love meal, and some people, I think I'm an omnivore. I look for romance, but I also look for a quick connection where I can find it. There has to be sincerity, though. It's really hard to have sex with someone you don't respect, and it's hard for me to fake it. It's hard for certain people to fake it. So if there's I've stopped having sex halfway through. I think maybe I have more of that. I would call it like a female thing, but maybe this is just a human thing. That sincerity in that connection. If the sincerity is not there, even if it's just like there's no real commitment, there still has to be a sincere connection and reason why you're doing it. So this all relates back to Guadalajara because I was over there doing my writing, but then I got a workout routine. There's a gym around the corner from my uncle's house, and I had a little bit of money. It was like $50 a month. I learned some exercises down there. That's another thing. So I brought up philosophies of romance and sales because there's a philosophy of your body, your kinetic body. Plato has a quote, it'd be a tragedy to die without knowing what your body's capable of, something like that. But Plato also was a wrestler. He was a guy who tried out for the Olympics. I don't think he made it, but philosophy wasn't his first calling. He was one of these guys who had a lot of interest in his physical ability. And I've always been trying to be like that too. I guess that's a theme I can say in my life, is I've tried to round out myself. Like I hung out with smart people and I read a lot, and I knew I had a proclivity towards like reading, and since I was in 6th grade and my teacher let me save my course, I was failing, and she let me save my grades by letting me do self-study, where I would read my own books and then look up the words on my own and then define them and write my own book reports and even draw my own like advertisements for the book. So that involved my cerebral side, it involved my creative side, my rational side, and I got to be my own authority. So yeah, also physically, I wrestled with those kids, and then I got into wrestling, so I tried to round that out. So when I try to do a heavy intellectual pursuit, also sitting for a long time is hard on your body. Even these videos, you get sore after doing this for 3 to 5 hours a day. So if I'm in a deep writing zone, I try to have like some sort of physical practice as well to balance out. So in Mexico I had that, and that relates to the girl because the girl was at the gym, started talking to her. She was the sign-up girl, and then I think I went to like some college with her, and I was starting to know how to start things, but didn't really know how to finish them. When I was really young, I didn't even know, not really young, but like in high school and stuff, I didn't even know how to start them. I was clueless. I'm sure there are girls who liked me, or everyone has options, no matter, because again, human beings, we're a coupling species. Even if you think that you're the lowest of the low, you have options. People are a lot more forgiving than you realize, and a lot of your insecurities are just projections. There's people that I would have never thought would be together, but yeah, I'm always surprised by how forgiving women are, and then also as I open up my heart and have more loving relationships, I start to not be so superficial myself, or just recognize how I was a little bit unnecessarily superficial in the past. So I think love is easier than we're led to believe, or we allow ourselves to believe, because believing you're a loser is a cop-out. Because there's a lot of, I guess I base that really on, there's a lot of lonely people in the world. It'd be different if everyone's coupled up, but we're alienated. One of the criticisms of capitalism, or of our modern society, because I don't really believe in those old dogmas which don't have relevance in the modern age, with everything being so mixed, of state-driven economies and everything, but and then internet, and then also who owns media, who owns capital. Is media the new capital? Is data the new capital? And who owns it and who creates it? So these old ideologies definitely need to be reinvented, but yeah, we are alienated, and we are lonely, and we're having less sex than previous generations. This is all verifiable stuff, so there should be plenty of people out there for everyone. I started to realize where my fruits are, where my bushes are, my trees, where they're growing, and life's an orchard. You could just walk around and pick fruit from the tree. I felt that with sales when I was in New York. When I would get really stressed out, I'd be like, all right, the money's just out there. Just got to imagine that the money's out there, and then you just reach up and you grab it. When you sit there and you're worried and you're stressed, you're not doing anything for yourself. And then I came up with two maxims in New York when I would get really stressed. There's always something you can do, and everything's going to be okay. The first one, there's always something you can do to get you out of that funk. Think about something productive you can do for yourself, whether in romance. So all these little philosophies, romantic, sales, now physical fitness. Um, what else? I guess I don't know. When I look back at these videos, I'll start to grab out these ideas and try to categorize and then see what ideas I'm coming back to, what makes sense. But yeah, so when I get really stressed out, and I still carry that with me. There's always something you can do, and then everything's going to be okay. That second one is that hope, that faith. You can't be despondent. You don't want to get stuck in, because you can't. You need a clear head to solve problems, and a worrying head is not a clear head. Some people say fake it till you make it, but you don't even really have to fake it. Just take a step back and put things in perspective. Your small problems today are probably not permanent. And if it is permanent, then accept it, you know. But it's perspective. Lack of perspective seems to be the cause of suffering, is what I come back to in my life. So I'm over there in Guadalajara. I'm at that gym, meet this girl. I'm starting to realize 25, 26. I'm getting over that addy girl, the addict. Well, I'm trying to. It's taken me a couple times to go back, and even when I came back from Mexico, one of the first things I did is I called her up, or she emailed me. I went over, and as soon as we see each other, there's that, like, she opened the door and I smelled her and then saw her, and it's probably a pheromone thing. We were just very, like, genetically attracted. But she was still in her thing, and I was becoming smarter at not falling into that pattern. Yeah, and then we had that's later on. We had more positive communications and not so much romantic pursuit communications. But in Mexico, I relate this because from high school to like my early 20s to my mid 20s now, is all these lessons take time to learn. In high school, totally oblivious, and now I'm starting to realize what options are out there. But then, like, in Mexico, nothing happened with that girl. I went with her. Obviously something could have, because I went from seeing her at the gym to getting her number to meeting up with her at her college and laying around. And I remember thinking, I want to lay with this girl on the grass and just make out with her. I just want to, like, kiss her. I don't want to have sex with her yet. I just want to have a cute moment at this university with her. But that's not what happened that day, because I was probably too much thinking about that and not thinking about having a good moment with her. And what I learned after that, and if I get too excited now, although the more experience you get, the more you're able to put things in perspective. Your first deal, you're super nervous about the money. But once you're closing business like nothing, then you're like, all right, I'm looking for red flags. I'm not, there's this guy in real estate who told me, I look for checkered flag, or was it red flags, not checkered flags, or something like that, but whatever it is. You're troubleshooting the deal. It's like the young guy is already spending that paycheck, but the old head knows that this could blow up for 20 different reasons. And that's the experience on the job, teaches you all those new reasons why things can blow up. So you learn to be cautiously optimistic, and you tell the client too. It's like cautiously optimistic. That's my phrase I would use. But like, you never know, because even though you've been doing this 5-10 years, I was getting 5-6 years experience. You could even see in sports, it's like you could be up by 10. I just watched the Laker game last night. LeBron just passed Wilt Chamberlain for 5th all-time scoring. They were up by 15. Portland made a run. They have Damian Lillard. He's an amazing player, so like they could put up points real quick. The Lakers are still learning how to play the defense they want to play. So you learn, like, all right, let's not put my anxiety or my on this to destroy it, but let's also not put too much hope. So you can go both ways, and that middle ground is what leads me a lot to this Eastern philosophy approach of like, yeah, the calm center is actually a good place to be, to allow life to happen without too much influence, a slight influence, because otherwise you're just passive and cold. So you do want to influence life, and then you look at fishing and you realize, oh, this is I'm looking outside. This is similar to fishing, where you don't want to, or anything else, or sports, or the wisdom in life seems to be knowing how to control your energy and knowing when to apply it and when to just chill out. So I'm still learning that in Mexico. I got a couple lessons, didn't really get many rewards. I met some friends. I wrote, but the story, I read it just yesterday. I read this in the video I did before this one, and I enjoyed it. It entertains me. So maybe I need to polish it up. Maybe other people don't enjoy it until I explain it more. I let a guy read it who's an editor, and he kind of got lost in the plotting, because it has this plotting where you're going through 3 or 4 different timelines. So you're going like in their early life, middle life, and then later on when they're in California, and you're cycling through every single scene is the next. So I probably have to explain that a little bit more, and that's what I was thinking. Maybe it works more as a play, where a lot of it is explained visually in the staging. And but that's the thing about having your treasure chest of writing or artwork, is that you can go back later on with a little bit more wisdom and perspective, and if the initial kernel of idea or thought or emotion is there and it was captured well, then now we can just repurpose it. So I really like that one. I wanted to talk about it because I ended the last video pretty abruptly. And then we have this next work, back of CA map. So I come back, I call my mom from Mexico. I'm like, all right, sorry for fighting with you. Before I even call my mom, I hit up an email to that addiction girl and told her, hey, yo, things still good? She was like, yeah, I'm good. I'd like to see you. I'm like, oh, I'd like to see you, blah, blah, blah. The romance it never was. I hit up a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, yo, I'm working on my book. And then I hit up my parents and I'm like, can you send me some money to come back? I'm sorry. And they're like, yeah, sure, you can come back, work for us again. So again, our family always comes back. We don't really fail each other. We just annoy each other, but we hold each other to high standards. So we are the initial tribe. And then I draw this. And this is the back of a California map, because I'm sitting there in my parents' office and I've created a little bit of art. I feel good about that Mexico trip. I went to visit my grandmother's grave. My mom was an orphan. Her mother died giving birth when she was 2 years old. So she's the youngest, because the one younger than her was what killed my grandmother. Her younger sibling and her mother passed when she was giving birth. So I laid some flowers on her grave. I tied my story back in. I didn't connect with all of my Mexican family, but I put some context to where my mom came from and talked to people who knew her growing up. That whole going to my grandmother's grave, I can't talk to my grandmother, but I believe that those actions are important to pay respect to. So even now I care about narratives even more, but back then it was all intuitive. Now I'm trying to create a philosophy or a system of thought, a way to get my ideas across in order to really become a public figure and start affecting change in the political sphere. But back then it was just to actuate myself as a human being. That's still what I want to do. Of course, I want to live as the best expression of myself, this one life I have. But now documenting it so that way we can audit it. I can audit myself, and then also I can gain the trust of other people by showing them how sincere I am. So I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people who are adopted want to find their biological parents. My brother went to Ireland. I want to go to Ireland. And then the way I state it in the Eastern philosophy Taoist terms is stitch yourself back into time and self. We all evolved or came from this earth. The earth peoples, that's what Alan Watts says. An apple tree, apples come from the apple tree. This rock in space seems to have created life, of which we are one example of all this life that's grown on this earth. So in a way, not even so much a metaphor, but really just literal. We're like a mold or a culture that's grown on the earth. And if you think about culture, what does culture mean? We think of culture as all the sum total of our pop culture. We use that term all the time. Or, killer whales have culture. They have wisdom or traits that they pass down from generation to generation. They show their youth how to kill seals. Killer whales, seals will beach themselves on these ice floats, and killer whales will come as a pod, push a wave towards the ice float, and knock the seals over. And they'll do that with their young in order to show the young how to hunt. And that is a specific thing that certain killer whales in certain areas do. So Animals have culture that they pass down generationally. That's not inherent in their DNA. Learned traits that are passed down through generations, I think, is like an anthropological term for culture. But culture is also a mold that just grows. So the earth cultures people like a petri dish. You can culture a mold. Looking at it that way, looking at life and this life force as a passive thing beyond us, allows, I think, the perspective to tap into this greater force beyond yourself, to humble yourself. Now humans or your mind isn't the largest thing, and then you can humble yourself, and you don't have this ego driving everything, which seems to be the source of a lot of our problems and mistakes. So the earth cultures people. Why was I talking about that? I was tapping into the more original patterns of that culture, going to my mom's earlier cultures, her earlier yeast that creates the sourdough bread, her mom who created her. I can't talk to these people, but you go to the physical place, just to make a story, that narrative, which we can throw all the facts in now, the facts being who I am. Come back to their office, I'm working for them, the 9 to 5, I was clean cut back then. I kept the mustache, so I have some pictures when I first came back. I had the mustache, and that's why this back of CA map. That's why I have the mustache. Probably this is post Mexico, but I kept the mustache. Let me draw it while I talk to you a couple more minutes. So I was trying to make money with my folks. I'm like, I'm gonna make money with the writing, but then I abandoned these projects, and why didn't I finish those projects? Why didn't I just stick on it and say, all right, this is how I'm supposed to break. So this is my break, but it's going to require work. Because when you're a young artist, you don't realize how much work it's going to require to break. And I would like to say that's because you're spoiled or you're entitled, so you don't realize how much work you need to put in. But it's not just that. Because I think it's a process you don't want to rush. So you could phrase it in the negative, like, oh yeah, these young artists just don't know about grinding, about putting in the effort to grind. But I don't really like morality, or like saying it's good or bad, or it's because of lack of this or that, phrasing things in the negative. It could just be the process that my seed wasn't ready to drop yet. And so I'm very forgiving for myself. That's another reason why you work out and you have things that are physically hard, and you challenge yourself in other fields, because you want to have a mental confidence in your ability to you want to know that you have a work ethic. I've never thought I was lazy, or else how can I train the people in wrestling? How can I be the guy at the front of the wrestling room making us do PT, or making us do the end of the workout calisthenics? I was one of the best cardio guys in our team, but I sometimes didn't go to our competitions because I was going to a speech and debate competition, or I just didn't take it that seriously. I didn't win that much because I didn't take my nutrition seriously, and I was doing wrestling more to challenge myself and less to win. Some people feel like they have to win in life. I've always been pretty confident where I do things for the experience. I guess that's maybe the egotistical side, where I'm like, you know what, I know I'm good. That's also with girls, when sometimes I feel like I could get more romance or more play if I acted more basic, what I would consider, or more a certain way, and I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I'm just gonna, when it comes, it comes. I've never been too worried about it. And when things get a little bit, dry, too much of a dry spell, there's tons of masturbation, of course, but then that gets old. But I do change it up a little bit. I'm like, all right, you have to have that come to Jesus moment. Do I need to really change up my look, or change up my something? But if a little bit of effort, knowing I have a work ethic, and usually things turn around for me. This chin is going too big. He's too big. I think I gave myself more of a dashing chin than I have in here. Definitely a bigger neck. Some of the perspective on this is kind of goofy, but it's all good. So, but that's what it is, perspective, right? Why do I value drawing so much? Maybe it's a literal form of perspective, but what is writing and what is philosophy and what are other things in life? But, metaphors sometimes are not metaphors, they're literal. What is life but trying to gain perspective? What is life but the same thing as an artist trying to learn how to represent things as true to their natural form as possible? And then now if you want to create an art that's not true to the natural form and you want to do like a crazy type of thing, that's cool too, but still, you gotta have some reference to the natural form, right? So there's always form and then commentary on the form. Something I read by not Pablo Neruda, Bukowski. When I started this audit of my life at the beginning of 2018, end of 2017, I was reading a lot of Bukowski for the first time, and I always thought he was just like, this dude's just, I never really like experienced junkies. So when people are vulgar just to be vulgar, or just like, oh dude, yeah, I was in the fucking islands and we were shooting Philippines, we were shooting like guns at coconuts, just stories I've heard from fellow travelers, other stuff. I'm like, this guy was telling me about Bitcoin and I should get on Bitcoin. He and his dad were mining, and they had their whole house as a mining operation. This was like 2011, 12. And if I had listened to him, I could have caught that huge jump right after, about a year after it was in the Wall Street Journal. But I didn't. I thought he was, this another experienced junkie telling me about how he fucked some girl on Machu Picchu, which was a good story. We shared a joint outside a hostel. I was traveling. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm just traveling the world and mining Bitcoin. This thing's going to be the future. And they was telling me about like just hookup stories. And they're not all hookup stories, but when guys talk, we're like, you bro out. And also, I guess guys not only do that to act like how cool we are because we're fucking these girls, but also, I think, just to let people know what the possibilities are. I got turned on to this one island in the Philippines where apparently you can buy psychedelic mushrooms on pizzas. It's like, the Philippines is very harsh on drugs, but in this one island, it's where all the Rastas live, and there's a lot of psychedelics, and you hear about these things from traveling. I go to Vieques. Vieques is an amazing place to live. But I was told to go to Vieques. I didn't read about it in a guide. I met someone and they're like, Vieques is epic. And then you go down there and you're like, oh shit, this is my type of place. Because that person was your type of person. That whole outer net, just word of mouth still is a thing in this world. But here we go. So, not the best, but, it's someone representative. I think I made myself a little sadder than in the picture, didn't I? Let me see if I could turn the mouth a little bit upwards. There we go. Now he's a little bit happier. Alright. Okay, so still got it. I like drawing randomly because it shows you your state of mind. So these pictures that are my favorites from my life are capture that moment. I was in my parents' office trying to sell insurance and be a good son and make him some money. And I did make him some money. Not the most money, but I always, made enough to justify my presence around and also put some money in my pocket. But I felt like this drive, like just create. And so you stop one day and you're just like, my mom was like, what are you doing? That's why it's on the back of the California map. I had like a California map, I think the counties. And this was the beginning of the germination of probably my idea of going around California running for governor. These ideas usually are like a year or two seeded. And then I'm just thinking about politics, other stuff, then all of a sudden it clicks and I'm like, why don't I just do this? And then usually there's a moment where I'm like, that'd be hilarious, or like, that's too ridiculous, like running for president, like that's insane. And it's like, well, and then I come to a point where I'm like, that would make a good story to write, but I would rather live that story than write it. I would rather write it in reflection than write it as fiction. That's a good saying. I would rather write it in reflection than write it as fiction. So, why did I have a map of California and the counties? And why was I drawn on the back of it? I don't know. This is a couple years before I ran for governor as a writing candidate. But I tried. No one heard about it. Obviously, I didn't get any traction. But it was a writing project, and this was an artistic